All right, friends, today we're diving into the world of tanning hides. And I am by no means an expert. Lacey brought up this idea. I've done probably maybe 10 total.
I feel like he's in the good phase where if you're wanting to learn, you can learn alongside him.
Yeah. And I've noticed that there's been some people on Facebook that have said, hey, I'm glad you're posting this because now I feel like I could do it. I was like, oh, well, that's good because I feel like I could do it too, but we'll see what the end product comes out like.
Yeah, he's done several and we've used them. So, I mean, I feel like it works. And now you're just like refining your skills.
Well, since I started hunting years and years ago, I don't know how long ago that was, I always thought, you should use the whole animal. And I remember I had a deer hide, one of the first deer I shot, and I bought one of those tanning kits. And I was really not excited about it because it was, so toxic. And the directions said, wear a mask and wear gloves and, all this stuff. And a lot of the chemicals you use for tanning a hide are kind of toxic.
Is there nothing sacred? I mean, I think, it's interesting. As you peel apart the layers of, synthesizing life, it just feels like there's no untouched piece of our human experience in that way.
Well, so I think the reality of that is that it's really gross. The whole process.
Okay, but gross, I was just thinking about this the other day, is determined in part, there's a human disposition to think some things are gross for sure. Yeah. But in part, some people will not handle raw chicken, right, with the bones.
So gross is relative.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. But I'm pretty high on the gross scale. Let's put it there first. My tolerance for gross is pretty high.
Right.
And I still have yet to brain tan an animal. Mostly because...
Wait, brain tan. So
brain
just
tan
for clarity's sake, I think it's important to know what that even means. Because, some people maybe,
So brain tanning is... This is a fun fact that I find fascinating. Every animal has enough brain matter to tan the hide of that animal.
Precisely. Not too much, not too little.
Yeah, I don't know how exact it is, to the ounce or what.
It depends on how much omega-3s they got.
Yeah, I think you would not find yourself wanting, is my thought on it. You're tanning a cow hide and you only have...
There's not enough brains.
Yeah, only have a squirrel's amount of brain for it, and you're like, oh man. But yeah, you actually mix up, and I haven't got any farther than that. That's about as much as I know. I know also you take a hatchet and a mallet.
And by tanning, what does that mean exactly? Is that meaning preserving it?
Yeah.
To it's a chemical reaction that happens when you put the hide in the brain in a bucket or in a
you smear it on like a jelly.
Like a layer.
Yeah.
And then let that set.
That has a chemical reaction with the skin, essentially.
I wonder what that is.
I know. It makes me want to deep dive into it.
I don't even like chemistry, but that, or it's not even organic chemistry. That's a whole different thing. But it is.
So
the original.
I've recently been kind of learning because most of the hide.
Can you preserve a human skin?
Yes. Haven't you seen Silence of the Lambs? That's. He
I
puts the lotion
purposely
on it.
have. Okay, stop. Not watch that. Thank you. Okay, all right, stop.
Yeah, he makes a jacket.
Oh.
So, but back to
dark.
What's important,
sorry, guys.
right?
This
Lacey went there, not me. The salting. So the first thing you do is you skin the animal, then you take the extra meat because,
right.
No matter what, there's always going to be a little bit of meat and fat left on.
Sinew and things that have to come off.
So you scrape all that off, and then you salt it, and the salting process locks the hair in to the skin. And right there you have a decision before you salt it, essentially, where you can go fork in the road. You can go hair on or hair off. And the hair off
I bet there are some real terminologies for this.
That's kind of what it is, hair on, hair off. It's
really?
Yeah.
What about pelt? What's a pelt?
I would think that would be hair on, yeah.
And then I don't know what you would call
leather. Hair off is essentially leather. So you put it in a lime solution. I haven't done this yet, and I want to do this. Probably would do it on the next one. You create a lime solution, like lime, the chemical, not the fruit.
And if you haven't seen, he's made some pretty cool projects, and maybe we can put them in the video if it's YouTube. Like with hair on, that you know, I mean, I think you don't necessarily, and you know, if you think of like an animal rug on the ground, it's going to be hair on.
Right.
Generally, shoes are hair off, right?
I don't know. I've kind of thought about hair on, like if you put the leather.
I've seen it
with hair in.
like parts of shoes, like an accent with the hair on for sure.
I was thinking the inside would be hair and the outside would be the
like
leather.
slippers.
Yeah, like a slipper.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. But just saying that if you want to see some projects that he's done, he recovered some rockers that were really neat in a hair on.
Abraham and I made a milking stool and then put hide over the top of it. We made it during the winter time, and you know your butts get a little cold, so we were like, well, let's do the hair on. And
excellent insulation.
I can't say that it really makes a difference, but it looks cool.
It's probably not as cold to the touch, you know.
Yeah,
like leather seats.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and it's a little bit fuzzy.
Well, what about suede then?
Don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, so when you take the hair off, then you actually remove the epidermis layer.
Epidermis.
Epidermis, yeah.
Okay, just to be clear.
Epidermis? You know what I mean. This is my science level. You scrape that off with the hair, and then that's like when underneath that is the grain of the leather. And I didn't know this, but leather only has grain on one side, and that's the fur side.
Right.
You knew that?
Well, I mean, looking at human skin, you know, like
I never looked at the
which
inside.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm like this is kind of leather, and then
That's
the older
grain,
I get, this
the
is
more
my
grainy.
This is my leathery.
That's where granny
my
comes
textured
from.
side.
Granny.
Yeah, like.
But yeah, and then you can turn that into all kinds of projects. But I watched a guy do it with like hickory bark, and apparently almost every kind of tree has a different property. The bark of that tree has a different way that it reacts with the leather to tan it, and you get like,
which is where tanning comes from.
You
the
get different products. Yeah.
In the tree.
This guy was doing
right.
Yeah, like an evergreen. I can't remember what the name of the tree. Yeah, tannin's tannin.
Okay, all right.
But and then you know you have like oak tannins would do something, and to me, like I think if I'm gonna do it, I would go like native. So like.
Could you smoke?
And you can smoke it. Yeah.
Oh, like smoke the tree first, then use it, or
no?
you just
You build a fire and essentially smoke the hide. So you put the hide over the fire, but at a point where it's
really
not
low temperature.
cooking it. Yeah, it's like smoking meat, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just the smoke, and you let that go for like a day or two.
Oh, that's what I want to do. That one.
I know. Well, there's this lady locally that does these workshops, and I'm kind of like, okay, we got to get her out here to do a workshop so we can.
Well, here's the tragedy, because, you know, back to his original comment about when he was, you know, skinning deer back, the original, those are very small. Like, you know, the hides of the sheep we would have sent off and turn into sheepskin. So, you know, we did, and you tried a few of those.
I've done a few.
Yeah, and those, they worked out okay.
They're very easy compared to a cowhide.
Right, and they're so small, and they're so light.
Right.
And
they,
processing takes about...
The thickness of the leather is a lot smaller. I mean, it's almost paper thin, where like parts of these cowhides are like a 1/4 inch thick.
Right.
So.
Right, but then, you know, even thinking about that, like a cowhide, like the whole of a cowhide, and we have small cows, right? We did a Dexter and what was the other one?
Devon.
A Devon. Yeah. And, you know, they're like how many? 100 pounds at least?
I would say like 75 pounds.
75
probably.
pounds. Okay, and I think they can weigh up on a larger cow up to like 300 and 400
Yeah,
pounds.
I've heard that, like, on like some of those big Angus bulls, like you have to have a tractor or something to pick the hide up. It's
so when
heavy.
you're thinking about carrying dead weight, that's what you have in your, just like when you're talking about managing. So what it seems like most of these places are doing, especially the smaller operations are doing, these processors, is for the most part just discarding this part of the animal.
Well, I mean, if you think you're doing like, even if you're doing like 10 cows a day, like, what would you do with all those hides? You would have to send it off, or
No, and that's totally
Yeah.
reasonable. But I mean, when we were like, well, what are you going to do with the hide? They're like, well, if you want it, you have to come get it the day after we.
Well, yeah, because the reality is, like, as soon as that comes off the animal, if you're not cooling it and fleshing it and salting it, like, you're on a timetable.
Yeah.
And I would say that's the other reason probably that. So we had the gross factor. The other factor is, like, the timetable. Like, you have to have
The time at the time. Yeah.
lifestyle that allows you to, like, devote. You know, I mean, I've put in countless hours into fleshing and salting and, you know, poking at it to see if it was dry enough or all of that kind of stuff that, like, if I was working a full-time off-the-farm job, I would not be able to do, is the reality. So I think that part of the...
And you really kind of need space for it too. Like if you're
Yeah.
in an apartment or,
an
you know, like,
apartment, oh my gosh.
but not, I mean, in like outdoor, and we don't even really have the right space because you need outdoor covered space really
Right.
ideally. Yeah.
I
anyway.
did find a new method for drying where you hang the hides up, and it seems to be working. And if that works, then you can almost hang them up. Like if you have the appropriate roof that's strong enough and like materials that are strong enough, you can hang them up kind of like on hangers. So like if that works all the way, I don't like that was for salting and drying. After it's tanned, traditionally I stretch it out like on a stretcher that's like I think it's 10 feet by 8 feet, and I don't know what I'm gonna do because I'm gonna have multiple ones ready at the same time, and if you don't dry, like, because I'm making them for rugs, if you don't dry them flat, then they dry like whatever they're drying on, you know, so like they'll be crinkly
The
or
shape.
have humps.
The shape,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's,
Which I did notice you had one that you kind of partially processed, and now it's like stiff as a board and
Yeah.
in exactly the shape it was hung in.
And now and I had it hanging over the fence, and now it's like laying on the ground, and like now the worms are eating it. But that one had like all this dandruff in it, and I was like, there is no way I'm ever gonna
That
get
cow
this
died
out.
of natural causes, so it was like not
It's
probably
kinda-
a good
it was-
candidate.
It was gross.
Yeah.
So I did not go through the effort of it. But yeah, I mean, the whole process I think is fascinating. I think it's like a part of the animal that, like, if you know,
Here's
like,
I
you
think
should
the
respect
tragedy. Here's the tragedy, and maybe they don't, but like I'm, you know, I venture to say it's worth investigating more. But at these processors, what I think, because you know, there's something like in my mind that's like fine, let it, you know, let the worms eat, right? Like
Yeah.
return it to the soil,
Compost it.
let it be a part. But what I imagine is actually happening is by and large, the byproducts of butchering and getting meat from one of these processing facilities is these things are put in trash bags and thrown into the trash. Like,
That makes you wonder.
and that kills me. That's like, okay, right now, like if we needed a new mission, maybe it's to close that loop because
Well, I mean, you think about it, if you would have to have like the most massive black soldier fly bin.
I know where else
But-
could they possibly put it other than a dumpster?
Yeah.
But also, well, that's terrible.
But isn't that kind of like a biohazard? I mean, I can't
don't
imagine
know.
they can just
Yeah.
throw that out. But you think about all the
Part
intestines.
2 is
and
going to be
everything.
reclamation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's like, and maybe it is a biohazard, but at the same time, if you put that in the right composting facility, that is nutrient dense.
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's the life you should be leaving on the ground no matter what. Anyway, whatever. Just a thought. It's worth considering. If you're butchering your own or you're sending yours away, I mean, that's half the reason we want to butcher our animals on our property.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, we had to send 3 last month as a kind of it was dire circumstances. We were in a drought, like, trying to manage the grass and having too many animals. And they were destined to go to butcher anyway. So it was like,
We just sent them early.
rubber meets the road. Yeah, we sent them early, so it's 3 at a time, and that was a lot. We couldn't manage that all on our own.
Plus, it's hot as blue blazes out, and
Yeah, this is not butcher season if you're doing it on your own in North Carolina anyway. But so half of the reason of wanting to do that, though, half the reason of, you know, learning the skills to be able to butcher large scale animals is that what a waste for all of that.
Well, I will say, like, the butcher facility for sure does not skin in a way that they're thinking about the end product of the hide.
Right.
Like, there's nicks and holes in the hide, so like when
just
I
getting
do
the job
it,
done.
I take my time. You know, they're thinking about getting the skin off, not like this is going to be a hide to use later. So I mean, I don't really fault them for that, but
No, but I'm just saying, like, that one of the things to consider if you're raising animals for sure is, you know, a lot of people are like, well, I'll just take it to the butcher, and that's, you know, fine, but you're potentially missing, as we did in this circumstance, this huge opportunity, especially when you think about that circle of closing that circle of, like, you know, the animal eats from the land, partakes in the land, and then I think what's left over of it should go back to the land, you know, right?
yeah, and I also think, like, what fascinates me about tanning is, like, and this only works on a small scale production. Like, and production is not the right word, but, like, when you're growing your own food to consume off of your own land, it fascinates me, that relationship of the animal. So, like, we raise these animals. In an ideal world, we kill them on our property. Their intestines go onto the property. The meat goes in our freezer. We eat the meat. We flush it down the septic tank after we process it in our bodies. It returns the nourishment to the land. The animals eat that. But then, like, there's this other element of, like, we're also making clothing, potentially. You know, like, and now we're wearing leather shoes from the animals that we have a relationship.
We're not. We would love to.
No,
we're not.
next
now,
level.
Yeah.
Part 2.0. But, like, I'm saying, like, you know, what an amazing, like, this is what fascinates me, and, like, the spiritual relationship to that of, like, consuming this animal, wearing, like, animal products,
Yeah.
and on land that the animal has also nourished while working other animals. Like, you know, like, there's this, like,
I can't, like, the energy of that, though, like, beyond, it's like the frequency, like the unseen.
Right. Yeah, that's what, yeah,
the
it's
unseen,
like spiritual. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Like, undescribable. Or
this
so,
is some hippie talk right here.
So complex.
Tune in for hippie talk with Lacey and Drew. No.
But I think that's what the world's missing. I mean, like, if you...
Well, it's a disassociation.
Right.
That's, like, making us all sick in so many ways, spiritually, physically.
Disassociation and disconnection.
Community. Like, yeah, we just...
Literal connection.
Yeah.
Is gone. Yeah.
But that's the synergistic community, like, where, you know, somebody needs something, you help them. If you need something, they help you. Like, all of those elements, you know, it's just like the grass feeds the buffalo feeds the grass. Like, you...
Right.
Yeah,
but
don't have it.
There's so much in between that's so complex that you can't, like, to try and define it or to try and break it down is kind of, like, futile. Like,
well, and it's funny if you think about a grocery store too, because it's like, ultimately, you know, everybody says only shop the perimeter, and it's like, but the perimeter, you know, at least it's obvious that you are buying a processed good, right? But that, or I mean, the center part, you know, it's obvious that you're buying a processed good. But the perimeter, you feel like you're not. You feel like you're getting raw and, like, whole and all of these things. But there's nothing there that's not processed. And in that process, you lose not just nourishment for your physical body, but all of these other elements. And, you know, I mean, it's like, what can we do to repair that? Well, I don't know. We're trying. But, like, I think it's an individual pursuit of doing everything you can to eliminate all the go-betweens, all the third parties that are infiltrating your food system.
Yeah.
And, like, getting over the grossness too, because I think that's why it started, really, right?
Yeah, and I'd like to go back to the grossness and
let's
scale back on the hippiness. For those of you that are listening to this because you might want to tan a hide, we digress a little bit, but and if you stuck with us to here, and that's all you wanted to do, good on you, proud of you. But what I would say is, if you're gonna do your first hide, wait until winter. Like, wait until we're
then it's not so urgent.
Right. Like, wait until 50 degrees, and you can take a hide of any sort and stick it in a trash bag and stick it in the freezer if you have a freezer that can hold that. What I will say that I learned the hard way this time is, if you drop 3 hides that are wet, or by wet I mean fresh, in the bottom of a chest freezer, they will freeze to the bottom of the chest freezer.
Lesson learned.
In a clump. So I literally
then you have to thaw the chest freezer.
Yeah, I had to fill it with, like, hot water. Abraham and I were in there, like, trying to figure out different ways to get it out. And it turns out it took, like, 3 days for it to thaw out enough to get it out. But that process waiting until it's nice temperature will that'll make a huge difference for you. And because now it's like July, we're fleshing hides, and you're literally in a swarm of flies. It is gross. Yellow jackets, other little bugs that you didn't know exist, but that like meat. And as you remove the flesh and as you get it salted, they disappear. But for an hour or two while you're fleshing that hide, it's it's a community.
Fans are not.
Yeah, fans aren't not enough.
Not an option.
And I would say the other thing is the one hide, our family came out and we had 4 people working on it, and that made a huge difference too.
Which, I mean, this thing is not giant compared to most other hides on big beasts. Technical issues. However, it is large enough to consider as if you're thinking about a living structure, like a teepee or something, it would cover about half a teepee, maybe.
If you used all 3, I think you could use a teepee. The other thing I do is I like to trim off all the little
Scraggles.
Peninsulas is what I call them in my mind. I don't, it's the little legs or little, I don't know. They all end up curling up or drying out weird. So if you kind of just trim all that off, then you end up with a nicer looking hide. And you just have to be careful because you keep going around, and before you know it, your hide's kind of small. But yeah, I mean, that's all I've got on tanning hides for right now.
See, and you thought you didn't have enough for this. I feel like this is exactly the right amount.
Yeah, dive in. Start tanning a hide. Start with a small animal. That's what I would say. And
squirrel. You could do a squirrel.
Yeah, you could do a squirrel. You could do a rabbit. I mean, anything that's got skin.
Chicken?
I don't know.
Oh,
makes me wonder.
If you tan the chicken skin, I want to see what happens. I think they're too thin.
Does it have to be a mammal? No, it
well,
does
no,
not.
Snakes.
Yeah, that was on the gross. I remember one of my friends in college.
That was not a tanned hide. That was a rotten hide.
He caught a rattlesnake and tanned it in his dorm room, and you could smell it when you got on the elevator.
That's so rude. Gross.
If Matt's listening to this one, he remembers. Yeah, I don't know. Chicken makes me wonder though.
Feathers on, feathers off.
Right. Oh.
Well, no, they make the turkeys.
Like a taxidermy.
Yeah, a taxidermy turkey. So why not a chicken?
Why a
because
chicken?
some people really love their chicken.
Why a chicken?
I think if you offered that service, you actually probably would.
That'd be like a
make
taxidermist. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, that's enough silliness. Thanks for listening. Share this with a friend who's thinking about tanning a hide.
Or even if they're not, maybe they will.
Yeah, tell them they should. And send us a message.
Or if they have one of those, they're pretty trendy. The tanned carpets.
Yeah.
Or a piece of furniture with a hide on it. Anything for that matter. If they're wearing it, send them this so they know what went into their.
What takes? Yeah. The process of tanning.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thanks for listening. I hit the play button there.